Hey, welcome everybody to the Homefront. This is Jeff Dudan, and we are thrilled today to have an Iron Chef America, a multiple Emmy Award-winning television host in the food industry, French-trained chef and entrepreneur, Mark Tarbell. Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and I'm not going to leave out the James Beard Award either. So
Nomination, yeah.
but I had the great fortune to meet you out in Arizona a couple of months ago at an event. You were very gracious. You spoke to us as a group, and then the coolest thing was, which I couldn't believe it. Well, first, I couldn't believe that you were there. Second, that at the end of the event, there was a food challenge set up. And we went downstairs and there was about 8 teams. There was tables of ingredients. We had some really good sashimi grade tuna. We had some lettuce. We had eggs. We had avocados. We had a whole table of ingredients. And we had 30 minutes to present a dish to you and the other esteemed panelist judges. And I'm not going to miss the opportunity to say our team won that.
Well, Jeff, doesn't it feel good to win? For those that think that winning isn't everything, Jeff, I think they haven't won yet.
That's right. They're still trying.
Yeah.
Well, really honored and excited. I'm a huge foodie and a big fan of. I think the best thing that happened to television, other than the Discovery Channel, was the Food Channel, and getting a look, and with all the great chefs, and getting a look behind the industry, learning I was in New York this last weekend, and we always go to great restaurants when we're there. And now we kind of got a sense of what's going on behind the scenes there. So I really, food's a cultural thing that people come together over all the time, and to be able to just share a great meal with somebody, there's nothing better than that.
Well, there's nothing better than for the heart and soul to either cook for someone or share a meal with something. It's just so much part of our DNA. I believe that there's something that happens, an equalizing effect, a normalizing effect, a joy effect that happens when you're around food. And it truly is special. I'm very blessed that this found me, I should say, this business and cooking found me.
Mark, would you share a little bit about how that happened? I know you first got interested in food in your early teens, and then you got an early start in your career. You traveled to Holland.
Yes, I did. So, there's a lot of headwinds being an entrepreneur. There's certainly a lot of headwind in the restaurant industry. High rate of failure, very challenging, adrenaline driven, very tough on everything, right? Tough on your shoulders, your hips, your knees, and ankles. But, the bigger headwind for me was there was no Food Channel when I started. There was no celebrity chefs. The Julia Child, who's famous, was off the air for a decade. BAM wasn't created. Guy was a dude that lived next door. So there was no notion of it being a career or a celebrity career. So not only did my passion drive me to it, but I had a lot of headwind around my family and people just not understanding my choice, saying that it was a bad choice. Well, I'm still wondering if it might have been. But so I just left. I mean, my drive and passion created an opportunity for myself in Amsterdam as an apprentice. I did a full apprenticeship there. And that was when it exploded. I made a decision I was going to open my own restaurant with no money, no prospect, and no future. I made that decision. And then I went to culinary school in Paris, wine school, and the rest kind of unfolded. But the headwinds have always been there.
This episode of On the Homefront with Jeff Dudan is brought to you by Window Hero. Remember, not all heroes wear capes. Is that honeydew list growing and growing? Save your time and money by bringing in the experts at Window Hero. From gutter cleaning to pressure washing, Window Hero has got your property covered. Visit www.windowhero.com for your free consultation today. That's www.windowhero.com. Now, back to the show. Where was that restaurant you opened? Was it in Holland, in Amsterdam?
No, I worked in Amsterdam and I worked in Paris. I worked in a 3-star and a 1-star restaurant there as an apprentice.
Okay.
And I worked in a lot of other places. both what they call front of the house, which is like management and wine training and wine education and things like that, and then back of the house, which is cooking. I learned enough, I believe, at some point by the time I was 30, and I was in Phoenix at the time. And I opened my first restaurant here in Phoenix 30 years ago, which in chef's years, that's like 100,000 years old.
All right. And then you're also a pretty good guitar player and an accomplished musician. So I can only imagine the people in your life at that time saying, don't pursue the food career, pursue the music career, which is more of a certain thing.
It was a dual passion. I played when I was in high school a little bit, but I was really an acoustic player. I played classical and acoustic and finger picking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Electric, I just never could get. There were people and my friends that were better than I was. And then I just left it. Because when you go into my career, you're in 100%, 1,000%. And I picked it up again decades later and had one goal, that I wanted to play in front of an audience. And I accomplished that very quickly, like in 8 months of picking the guitar up. And I've been scared ever since. I think I've done it so much, I've played with like Alice Cooper, Nils Lofgren from Bruce Springsteen band on stage. I played with, I was on stage, just me as an accompaniment with a guy named Chris Christopherson, who was the original Star is Born and wrote Me and Bobby McGee and a bunch of other famous songs. So I've had some really crazy experiences on stage with friends, but I still get up there and I'm going, what am I doing here?
Yeah, that's two incredible careers. So you're 30 years old and you've been hustling it in the back of the house. You've worked your way up. You got an education. Was it just absolutely crystal clear that it was time for you to start your own restaurant?
It was sort of a burning desire. I've always been running like I'm late and I'm behind and my whole life. And I still do that to a degree. I haven't ever been able to solve that issue, but I always feel like, just that something's on my back and chasing me and I got to keep running. So I felt like, the opportunity would pass if I didn't do it. And the desire was there 100%. Again, had no money in prospects, but I did have a 401k. I did have, a nice car that I bought and paid for when the career that I built and a little bit of cash. And then I borrowed some money. So I didn't have any partners or anything, but I just borrowed money. And that was hard because people are like, you're opening a restaurant and you've never been in the business. First of all, you're opening a restaurant. The answer is no. I'm not loaning you money.
Right.
Because 9 out of 10 fail, independent restaurants historically, or data, around the country. So I had to kind of scrape it together myself and put myself out there on the line. And I was there every day during construction because my dad was in marine construction. So I did understand building to a degree. I'm not great at it, but I understood how to swing a hammer. So I was here every day. That was my job. And I pushed it along and helped put together the restaurant and, scrimped and scraped and opened it up.
How many seats did you open with?
144.
Okay.
I took 2/3 of the space and built this oval semicircle bar, which back in 30 years ago was actually quite remarkable. And I called it a dining counter. And back then people could smoke in bars and I didn't let them smoke. And they're like, this is a bar. You should be able to smoke. And I'm like, well, it's a dining counter. What are you talking about? I had people yell at me saying, I'm going to fail. No one's going to do this. And actually for the first 4 months I was open, not one human being sat at my bar. Not one. Except the mad people that left because they couldn't smoke. And then I remember there was this guy named James, and he owned an insurance company. And at the end of the bar one day, he sat at it. And then he was like, this is really cool. And then he brought another person and another person and another person. 5 years later, it was 3D.
Yeah. Now, is that the location that you're still in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Believe it or not. Yeah. Yeah.
30 years.
I don't reflect much on that, but, I'm obviously intellectually understand that it's quite impossible what I've done, being here in the same location for 30 years with no partners and no trust fund.
Right. Yeah. Very unusual.
Yeah.
Even the best of places need to change it up a little bit once in a while. Because, so I'm in the service industry, and for us, we keep when we put people in business in the franchise, the first year's slow and the next year's a little bigger, the next year's a little bigger. In the restaurant industry, especially if you do some of these franchises, like that first year can be big because everybody wants to try it. But do they come back? And once people try it, and if it doesn't hit just right, then word gets around, and you can't induce people to get back into the place. And I think you can see the writing on the wall at that point. How do you keep it fresh, and how do you keep people coming back year after year?
Well, Jeff, I want to touch on that because it's actually very true. And I believe that it's better to not have a hot burn early in any business you do. You learn so much that first year. You make mistakes, but it's not as critical because you don't have as big an audience or a big a pool of customers, and you can communicate with them. There's so few of them, generally speaking. You can talk to them directly and learn from them, and hopefully save them and those kinds of things. So I teach and advise slow burn. Because you're absolutely right. There's so much interest in trying what's new, but it's very, very, very deceiving because generally speaking, it's a big spike and then a big drop. And you have built all your dreams and desires and your business model on that big spike. And then all of a sudden, oops, you went out and bought the Porsche or the the country place or the lake house, and based on your projections and how it was going, it doesn't happen. So that's where a lot of restaurants fail in businesses, I think. But the other thing is, that, I think, how do I keep relevant? That's a really good question. It's actually, I'm rather simple. I wake up every day believing in my heart that I've opened for the first time at 5:00. And I have to believe like it's that first day I open, and I look at every customer with gratitude and thanks. I listen to them. I don't ever read. I've actually never read an article that's been written about me, and there's been tons. Wall Street Journal and just a lot of New York Times, a lot of great stuff over the years, but I've never read it. Been on TV a lot, never watched myself on TV. And so I think that's a part of it. It's not only part of who I am, but it's a discipline that none of that stuff matters. The day when I open tonight at 5:00, no one cares. They don't care about that. That might have brought them to the door, but actually the expectations are even higher when you have accolades. They're coming in up here, and in their own mind, what up here is, they've made that up, that narrative. So you now are competing against a narrative that you didn't create, but it's created in their own mind. So you really have to work hard to blow them away.
How important is the front of the house to customer loyalty in a restaurant like yours?
Well, as a chef, and chefs that may be listening, you may be upset, but I've been saying this for years. It's number one. Customer loyalty is driven by guest-facing people, salespeople. In our case, it's bartenders, servers, server assistants, hosts, and managers. They are number one. Without them, your food, well, first of all, if they do their job well, even if you make mediocre food, it'll taste better. But if they do because everyone knows how they feel and how they've been treated. Not everyone knows the nuances, the subtle nuances, the last 5% of what they've eaten or tasted. So everyone knows how they've been treated.
Yeah. The places that we frequent, there needs to be good, crisp, honest service. It doesn't have to be, I don't need a maitre d' to greet me all the time, although it's nice when they have a key person there that recognizes you by name. But the food, if you want me to go back, 20, 30, 40 times a year, like the food needs to be good. And we have a little place right here by us, and we moved to a new neighborhood on the lake. And I always say, one of the best things about it is I'm 3 minutes away from this restaurant because I can swing by there on the way home. I can get takeaway, and it's always the same. And it's not fancy, but I'll bring people there that are guests in from out of town because it's actually one of the best meals that I can get for them.
It's you're speaking to me, and it's like music to my ears. But everyone finds that place, and it has a
Yeah.
lot to do with consistency. It has a lot to do with comfort. Has something to do with habit. But all those habits are formed because they know you, and you know them, and it's a sure thing. And the fact that you trust them so much to bring your friends, because that's a risk. You're
Yeah.
probably not going to bring them to that new hot place that just opened that you haven't been to, and the friends are only there for one night. Unlikely it's going to happen. You might go on a Monday, when it's a toss-off night, try it
Yeah.
out. I always say, and it may be true in other businesses, but it takes at least 3 visits to change people's habits. And you have to just blow them out of the water in those first 3 experiences for them to change. Like if I was moving to that lake community you're in, I would have to work so hard, and you know me, but I'd still have to work so hard to pull you away from that other place because you're already there. The only way I can win is if I overdo it and go crazy and really win you over, or they lose. They
Yeah.
somehow mess up some night, and I'm there to catch you.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Quick fact check. You said Monday. Kitchen Confidential. Anthony would say, "Don't order fish on Monday."
Yes.
Well, I don't know that's probably not a fair question. Should I redact
It's a
that
very fair
question, Mark?
question. I'd love to answer that question because
Okay.
obviously it very much depends on the sourcing standards and the integrity of the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you're in a city like Phoenix, where from both coasts, which would be Santa Barbara, Seattle, Gulf Coast, and Boston, where we have direct flights that come in every day, 2, 3, sometimes direct flights. What we've done is for seafood, in particular, is we put it in the belly of that plane and then we go down and pick it up. So we're probably getting our fish order from that morning the same time the fish is being delivered in Boston.
Got it.
And that's a true fact because there's an 8 o'clock plane, and with the time difference, we get it about 11.
Yes.
So, and we order it as much as we can. Mostly it's 3 to 4 times a week. And you might think, well, there's, what if I order it on Monday and I still have it on Tuesday? If it's properly iced, and it's going to be fresher than probably most of the restaurants in Boston or Santa Barbara. And then we only order enough so that we run out. So we always want to be in that deficit scarcity. So we're not going, oh my gosh, we paid so much for this swordfish. We have to do something with it. That's never been a philosophy that I wanted to cook with, but it's not uncommon.
Yes.
But we basically do, we run out.
Yeah. Well, and it's an upscale location. And then these days, how many plates are you turning a night?
So it's during season. So our season is pretty much 8 to 9 months a year. And then we have a little bit because we're mostly built on regulars and local business. So we don't go in July and August. We're still busy, but not as busy as season, which is the winter. But during winter, we'll do, on the corner, we'll do 400 to 600 meals, sometimes 700 meals a night. We're only open at night. And if you can imagine, let's say you're doing 300 meals, a good solid night, and you have an 11-foot stainless steel, what they call pass or counter, where the kitchen separates itself from the restaurant. And imagine people ordering 3 courses, salad, entree, maybe a dessert. So that's 900 plates in 2.5 hours or 3 hours going across an 11-foot span with 6 people working on it. So that just puts kind of in sharp focus the complication and the dance that it takes to make that happen.
Yeah, and I love the thought of that. So I had an early experience in front of the house and back of the house. I was 12 and 13. I was in 7th and 8th grade. And there was a really popular Mexican restaurant outside of the city of Chicago called El Matador. And it was when my parents used to go. So they said, well, so Friday and Saturday night, I'd get there around 3 in the afternoon, and we would eat. They would feed us all. So family style enchiladas and all that. And then we would spend 30 minutes folding napkins, which I can still do, at least 10 a minute right now, and, fold them into little triangles and stuff and set them up. And then we'd set up the tables and everything. And I would, so I was bussing to get started. And then the second year I actually moved into the kitchen, and I don't know what the position would have been called, but I was responsible for appetizers and stuff and that kind of stuff. So I was on the line, and, I'm 13 years old. I'm on the line in this fast moving, I don't know how many seats we had, probably 100, I don't know, 200 seats in there, 150 seats in there. It was a pretty good sized place. And just had a really a great experience. Now, I've heard you say that you must love hard, you must love repetition, and you must love consistency to do what you do. How challenging is it today to find the kind of people like like when I did whatever I was told. You know, when I was growing up, like well, that's not exactly true in all cases, but that's actually not true in most cases. But I will say that I didn't like to fail, and I was a hard worker. I was hard headed. But, you know, what's it like today finding people that want to go into that kitchen and really work their way through that career path?
Well, you know, I have been open 30 years, and I've had, it's sort of a person that business attracts a lot more youth, right? So I've
Sure.
had at least 3 or 4, maybe 5 generations of X, Y, Z, Z, whatever they are, generations. And for me, fundamentally, all young kids are the same. There may be different ways you communicate. There may be different motivations. There may be different, pressures of the time, or dialogue, or things that are happening out there in the world, in the news, and their influences. But once it comes down to it, if you can get anyone to fall in love and find purpose and get reward and get growth and get challenged, like truly challenged, and learn to love that, it's addictive. I think it sounds like it was for you at that Mexican restaurant. You'd probably run through walls for them, and you didn't mind the work. You just cranked it out. And like you said, you can fold 10 napkins in 10 seconds. And that was probably a badge of honor for you when you could do that. Like, I'm sure you got reward. The owner liked it. People around you liked it. And when you were in the kitchen, I'm sure you were a mad fast, it's called garde manger in France, but the cold station, you did salads. That's a fast station, especially if there's desserts and salads and appetizers. I call it, you get crunched, because, when there's a turn of tables, you're doing apps and desserts at the same time. So it's like an apex. So you get it. But I have a great deal of hope. And we still only hire 1, 2, or 3 out of 100 people we meet. It's been that way forever. It is hard. If you put it that way, yes, it's hard to find people, but we're very particular, and our hiring process is very intense, and it's not for everyone, and it's very non-restaurant. Most restaurants are like, oh, you showed up, you're in, and that is not a good plan. A lot of turnover happens when you do that. So I recommend really being patient, hire slow, and move people on quickly. But I love the kids of today. Now, during that period of time we just all lived through, the worldwide pandemic, a lot changed. But it's all zipped back pretty quickly. People are back to work. They're loving work. They feel motivated. They want to grow. They want to, have a career out of it. Even if they don't make a career out of restaurants, we teach people leadership skills here. We teach them business. We teach them personal responsibility. We teach them what culture is. We teach them what good communication is. So I really take it very seriously that I want to make them better and more prepared for no matter what they do. We're a restaurant, and it helps us for sure, but mostly we want them to be prepared for what's next.
Well, that's an incredible and very responsible and very admirable tack to take. And I take the same thing in our company. I have an owners only call with all of our franchise owners. We're over 200 out there now. And just pouring into, we're not talking about your business. I just want to give them, I'm pouring into them about being a business owner. We had health. We did blood work. We do assessments. We do anything that just has to do with making them better anything that they can take with them into their next life or whatever it is. And we also include all of our staff inside of that. Can you share whatever you'd be comfortable sharing about your hiring process?
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you the whole thing. First, we make it one click easy to make an appointment with a director level person. And that's really important. I think that we lost a lot of people because they're just like sending in a application and getting no response and going through 3 steps to get an interview. So we do that right away. And then we make it, we used to have a 3-step interview, and we compress it in one day to respect people's time. It used to be like a week long of interviewing and a week long of discussion. And, there was methodology around that. We wanted to see if people really wanted the job, so we made them come back and back and back. Today's world, it's one click. So we do it all in one day. We have all the key people there, and it's always a trio. And we ask a series of, there's 3 pages of questions that each leader gets. It has to be the primary leader who they're going to report to, and then 2 others. Doesn't matter who else. And we believe that each person, as they interview these candidates and ask these questions, and they could be random, like, what's your favorite TV show? What's the best experience you ever had? Tell me about your favorite boss. It's not unusual, but they're all really interesting questions. But there's a goal behind it. We want to get to know the person. That is the whole goal of the 1, 2, 3 interviews. And at that 3rd interview, if everyone gets together, that trio, and says yes, 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 3 yeses, then we move forward to what we call the demo. Now, that demo, it could be a server in the kitchen, that could be chopping, or that could be following a server and clearing a table. That demo is when we tell them they're interviewing us, because this is a very important relationship. Everyone that's in the interview process, both someone hiring and the person getting a job, both want to put their best foot forward. Usually it's a scarcity thing from the person hiring, and usually the person interviewing wants a job. So they'll pretty much say and do anything to get the job on both sides. We remove all that, and we make it very clear that we're interested in you, but you have to tell us if you're interested in us, if this environment works for you. And so we try to get it down to that human level very quickly. And then the first week is very much about making sure that everyone made the right decision, because it isn't about someone who has technical skills to do something as much as it is will they fit in with the rest of the people that we've hired? Will they fit in with our culture? Will they enjoy it there? Will they thrive? Will they feel like they belong? Those are more important questions to us than anything. So we clear all that up through the interview process.
Fascinating and very smart and very efficient. I've come to, I heard something last week that I've started to adopt a little bit, that complainers, creators don't complain and complainers don't create. And I've heard you say that we look for people that are warriors, not victims, which is kind of 2 different ways to say the same thing. Yeah. How can you tell if somebody is like your people when you're interviewing them? Is there things that you've learned, whether it's backgrounds or adversity that people have faced, or just their general approach and demeanor within the interview process? Any clues that you've discerned over time?
Yes. I mean, first of all, taking the lens of really being observant and making notes and asking open-ended questions. We never talk about who and what we are, because those are all tells and leads. And also facial expressions, nodding, any acknowledgement of something that may be favorable or unfavorable. You have to be really, really neutral and just keep asking the open-ended questions, like, oh, where did you grow up? Oh, I grew up here. What was that like? Oh, it was like this. What was your favorite part about it? Did you have a person you liked there most? Tell me about them. You just keep going down that chain of questioning, and eventually it exhausts itself, but you might find some interesting information about who they really are and what they believe. And that's when you talk about a challenging time they had with a boss, and you go, well, why? And tell me about that boss. Did you learn anything from it? So that's always the grace part, right? Even if it was a tough boss or a bad situation, ask if they learned anything. And if they positively say, well, yeah, it was really tough, but there was one part of that after I left, I really reflected on, I got this out of it, and that was positive, and it helped me in the future, even though it didn't work out. That shows you that they have resolve, they can pivot, they're going to shake themselves off and step it up and learn what's best, and maybe learn from an experience. And hopefully that's helpful.
Absolutely. And I think very, very, very wise. Mark, we can't get off the phone today without saying a few words about great wine. And I know that wine is a big part of the relationship with food. I know that you've got some interest in it. You have the wine store, and you also have a new venture called Cha-Cha Moosh. And I would love to learn a little bit about your history with wine, and then how that's, how that career has paired with your restaurant career.
Well, that's a great question, Jeff. Like most people, my relationship with wine started very awful. and I'll explain what I mean by that. There was a wine called Riuniti Lambrusco, and it was Riuniti on ice. And after my very first experience with wine, which was Riuniti, not pleasant, I renamed it Ruin Your Nighty. And, and it did. So my introduction was, everyone created this aura around it, or this elegance, or this, um, basically it had its own sort of status. Wine was very status driven. And I have to be honest with you, I went to wine school when I was 19 in Paris. And before that, I tried to taste wine and learn about it. Even in my first few months at wine school, I had no idea what they were talking about. I'm like, this is bitter and it's awful. And they're going on, well, it has, if you were just to churn up with a delicate flower in a forest floor of this place in Tuscany, and that's what the aromas would smell like. And I'm like, have you lost your mind? Like, I had no idea what they were talking about. But I'm not a quitter, and I just kept at it, and I kept tasting, and I kept learning. And eventually, what I can tell you now is very simple. It's like learning a language. Every single person has the ability to be a master sommelier. You have all the tools you need. Some are a little bit more adept at it because they're more interested in others, but physiologically, we all have the tools to be a great taster. We just don't have the language and the words to put to it. And the barrier is not that we can't put words to it. It's because we're afraid, because we don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't want it smells like my grandma's sock drawer, because it does, and that would be accurate, but you don't want to be shamed at a table, right? So
yeah, I would
what
use
I
the
tell
word
people
tannins
is say it's
instead.
grandma's sock drawer, and then, maybe eventually you'll talk about other words that might mean the same thing, like forest floor, or, a little bit funky, or, a degraded earth, or fertilizer, or, there's so many other ways it could be put. Anyway, a misty morning, which is mildew. So fast forward, after all these years of trying to demystify wine, I always wanted to do my own wine project. And in fact, I was just out there in California yesterday, bottling my Reserve Chardonnay and Merlot, and also blending and working on my Reserve Cab and Petit Verdot. But most importantly, the best part of the day was I'm making a Method Champenoise, a true champagne style wine, in two ways. One with a grape called Picpoul, which is low alcohol, super fresh, really exciting, easy, no-brainer stuff. And I finished the blend of the 2023 of that. And then we're doing this long-term project. We won't be available it's been in bottle for over 2 years. Probably won't be ready for another 2. I want to go head-to-head with true champagne. And I've found a vineyard, an organic vineyard, and a farmer that I love, of Chardonnay. So it'll be Blanc de Blanc, Chardonnay based, and I'm going to go after those people in Champagne. To say I'm passionate about it is true. To say it is part of life for me, yes. Is it the most important thing? No. I still believe food and community. I believe friends and family. I believe who is around your table is more important than almost anything. And then
That's
food
right.
comes next. And wine is just there to enhance. It's there to enhance flavors, to contrast flavors of food. And if you choose to try it in moderation, it's there maybe to bring some tactile, aromatic joy, interest to your life. And maybe you get a little happy too, but it's really just there to add value and enhance. It's not center of the plate.
Talk to us about Cha Cha Moosh and what the opportunities are for people to learn from you and experience some great products, some great wine, and what's your vision for that brand and what it's going to bring to people.
Well, it's a unique, very, very rare, it's rare because I'm not making very much wine, and it's really an opportunity for you to play with me, go into my playground, if you will, the world of wine. And I am going to be making wines from here. I've already made wine in France. I'm going to be making wine in other places with friends that I know very well that have excellent wineries. I'm going to use their wineries, but buy all my own stuff, buy all my own grapes, and make my own farming protocols, and make these really limited production, unique wines. And I'm going to share those experiences in the form of stories, or, things you wouldn't thought of, areas that you've had wines from or heard about, but never had wine quite like this. Now, I'm going to make them delicious. I'm going to endeavor to make them delicious and not That's interesting. I don't want to do that. I want to make like, oh yeah, this is great. I can't believe it's from X, or I can't believe this is from Y. I've never had this grape. Try this out. And so I really want to take my 40 years of experience and bring it down to something that's super enjoyable, super easy, and delivered right to your door. It's a membership based, direct to consumer, direct to your doorstep model, where you pay one fee every quarter. You get quarterly wines, at least six bottles, and then 3 times a year you get little treats from me, little birthday presents. And that's my chef side. I'm going to be using my creativity and access to share with you some things 3 times a year, intermittently throughout these wine deliveries. So it's kind of it's a community. I want to know everybody in the community. I want to build community. I want to do events with this community, and I want to be useful to this community. I can't wait.
Personally curated wine and food gifts by you.
Yes.
What could be better? So it's CHACHAMOUCHE. Is that a .com, or
yes, it
where
is.
can people find it?
That's a .com.
So www.CHACHAMOUCHE.com, and sign up today. Available in 14 states right now?
Oh, no, it's available in all 47 states that allow delivery.
Okay.
But we limited our there's 2 reasons. We did a pilot, and we have 14 states, and we have a great group of members already. We're taking a wait list, which we haven't quite set up yet, but it will be done tomorrow or the next day, where we're not going to do any deliveries in the summer for the reasons of heat, even though we do it with cold delivery in cold trucks. We just don't want to risk it. So the next delivery will be end of September, and we're taking a wait list because, we don't have a lot of wine, and we wanted just the right people, and we're going to accept more people from the wait list in August and September for our next delivery.
Well, the good news is, Mark, that this episode won't air for probably 4 weeks. So I will be in front of everybody who's listening right now on the wait list. But after me, feel free to pile in. But I'm not sure I signed up when I met you. I think I went to the website, but I do need to sign up for that. And I'm very much looking forward to sharing your experiences. Quick question here. And, you've done all of these things. And you've had multiple lives within a life, and overseas and back here, and musician and chefs and restaurant, but yet family is important to you, and you've integrated. Any experience that you can share for entrepreneurs who are looking to not sacrifice their dreams, not sacrifice their careers, but also not sacrifice their family?
Well, I'll just say what I believe and how I've done it. I was a workaholic, insane, driven chef, restaurateur until I got married and decided to have kids, which I did on purpose, by the way. It was a choice. That put in a lot in my face, a lot of how I was living, how I was working. I didn't think I worked that much. A 12-hour day was a half day for me. Like, it was easy peasy. I could work. I could outwork anybody. And I wore that as a badge of honor. And what it forced me to do is threw it in my face, some of the things I was saying yes to, some of the decisions I was making. And was I doing that for ego or pride, or to be efficient? Was it the best way to live my life? And since I had kids on purpose, I wanted to be a great father and husband. And I had to say no to a lot of things. And I had to reorganize my life. Give up a lot of my ego, things that really gave me a lot of self-worth, ambition. And I told myself I was going to do this. It took about 3 years of transition. It wasn't easy. And I'm still faced with a little bit, but I also see the runway. My kids are getting a little bit older. I can start to accept different challenges, but I'm also doing them more thoughtfully. Because I do believe balance in life is maybe a better entrepreneur, a better businessman, a better leader. I really felt I just buried people, because I felt I knew more than them, or I could work harder than them. And I knew everything in my business. As I've learned, not so much. I don't even know what I'm good at now, frankly. But I try not to stay in get out of people's way, mostly at this point.
The kids are a great grounding rod for, your lightning, and, they bring you back. And I think too, we're also obligated to do lots of things, and we're obligated to push ourselves because we want to set an example for them. And we want to show them what good looks like. We want to show them how to make decisions. There's one little story in my book that I wrote about going to a restaurant and with my young son, and we all recognized that the waitress didn't charge us for the second glass of wine. And, I could see that he was watching what I was going to do with that. And, I brought it to her attention. I said, hey, I don't think you didn't charge me for this, if you know what the right thing to do is, you should do that. Mm-hmm. And if it's clear what the right thing to do is, and those little examples that are set in those little moments, and then the big examples that you set by trusting yourself to take chances, going on television, creating a restaurant, doing a business, they are watching everything that you do, and they will be much better off. Even if it doesn't work out, there's lessons of humility and failure that they can gain. So, well,
you've said it very well, Jeff. I mean, that humility and failure, we're very open about that we're not perfect. We talk about it. When I've made a mistake, we openly talk about it. Sometimes serious, sometimes with laughter.
Yeah.
But I have to share that I've had a lot of friends that, in my time, we all started together, that have become 500 millionaires or billionaires or 100 millionaires. And to a person, those that did what they thought they were doing right, being a provider and working and traveling and not being home and not being there to pick their kids up or drop them off at school, to a person, there are 3 of them that have bawled in private conversations with me, just saying that they were not there. And if they had all the money in the world, they wish they could go back. This is before I had kids.
Yeah.
They wish they could go back and do that over again because they literally can't get it back. Now they try with their grandkids, but it's a different relationship, and already their kids' relationship with them is already locked in to a degree. And, it's the thing they carry around with great weight. I mean, they have everything in the world, money, boats, planes, whatever, but they're sad. So I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I have many experiences with people that have shared the same thing with me. I sacrificed a lot of economic upside. I coached over 30 seasons of my kids' sports. I franchised my business because I was all over the Caribbean and Hawaii and California doing disaster restoration work, and I was never home. And I made a conscious effort to sell all of my company stores under a franchise model so that I could bring people to me instead of me having to go to them, and it allowed me to be more present. And it is the best decision I ever made. And, we do okay. We're not eating TV dinners every night. So
I am.
Well, hey, Mark, I know you've got to bounce, but I've got my last question for you. If you had one sentence to make an impact in somebody's life, what would that be?
You know the right thing. Just trust that, take a pause, take a breath, and be very, very quiet and intentional about every choice you make, because life comes from you, not at you.
Oh, perfectly said. Nothing to add. Mark Tarbell, Tarbell's Restaurant. Are you in Scottsdale or Phoenix?
Phoenix is the restaurant, yes.
Phoenix is the restaurant. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on today. This has been Mark Tarbell with Jeff Dudan, and we have been On the Homefront. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Jeff, my friend.